Hey folks, it's Jeremy Kirkland. How are you doing? You're listening to Blammo. We got a freaking banging episode this week. I'm very happy you're here. I'm happy I'm here because it's John Darnielle Day of the Mountain Goats. It's John Darnielle. First off, he is the Mountain Goats, but he is one of my favorite people ever of all time. Just God, don't make a goat joke about mountain goats. Don't do it. I literally am biting my tongue while I'm doing this intro. But if you're not a fan of the Mountain Goats or John Darnielle, you're about to become one because he's just the freaking best. But I'm really glad he came on the pod. We actually recorded this, I don't know, a few weeks ago, but I wanted to sit on it a bit because he has a new album that comes out this week called Days. It is a Mountain Goats album, but if you are a person like me, you know, digging into the canon of the Mountain Goats and John's music over the years has just been one of the best parts of my life. I mean this so much because I put it on when I feel good. I'll put stuff on when I feel bad, and like he's there. He's got some great things to say and sing to me for every mood I've ever been in. But hopefully you'll dig into this because we kind of go all over the map. I'll say this at the beginning. I first met John when I worked at 4AD, which was the Beggars Group early on, and he had come in to show us his new record. And I'm putting this story in there because I don't know if this made the cut in the original recording, that, you know, because a lot of times I'll have guests on and I try to explain to them, like, look, here's how I know you. And some of them don't care. John cared because he always cares because he's John, right? But I was working at Beggars, and at the time, a lot of times artists, we would get a new record from an artist, and, you know, sometimes it would be presented to us by one of the people from the label who is in personal contact with the artist, and the artist would bring it in. But John is different. He came in and brought his new album at the time, which was The Life of the World to Come, to the Beggar's office and sat in with all of us on staff as we listened to it. So we got to listen to this record that most of us had not heard before in front of him, with him also like narrating it and explaining it to us. And it was so good. It was so freaking good. It's still one of my favorite records ever. It's a heavy record, by the way, if you're going to dig into that. But we're talking about his new record, Days. But I just want to give you that context because that's the kind of guy he is. He's like the kind of guy who he's explaining things to you, but you can also just enjoy his art, and he's okay with how you enjoy it or what you pull from it. He's a pretty cool guy. He's a confident guy. All right, enough about that crap. He joins me to talk about the band's new album, Days, and why he's finally allowing himself to look back on a career that's always been focused on what's next. We get into aging without becoming nostalgic. Very, very key thing there. Why every act of creation is ultimately hopeful, and what it means to see your own life and your parents' lives with fresh eyes. By the way, this gets a little bit heavy. There's just stuff in there that got me a little emotional because it's hard not to feel the weight of life when you're talking with a person as prolific as Mr. Darnielle. So we chat about Randy Newman, which, oh man, now there's the GOAT. Bands that shaped him, grief, faith, songwriting. Oh man, it's all in there. I'm so excited for you to listen. I'm going to shut up. Here we go. Let's do it. How you doing?
I'm good.
Life of the World to Come is still a record I play all the time.
Oh, thank you.
For many Mountain Goats fans, I don't know. They all have their own sort of, you know, record that they're obsessed with in your catalog. And Life of the World is still a personal favorite. But I want to talk about this new record. Some of this stuff with this record, you know, has made me think a lot about, you know, a big part of this record was you looking back and realizing that you have a catalog, you have a history, I have a few
records, yeah.
Yeah, quite a few. And you have stuff that people are now looking back at, but it sounds like this is the first time you were becoming more aware of that history.
Well, I'm always aware, but I'm usually resisting engaging much backward looking. People, yeah. I mean, I try to avoid speaking in generalities, but I do think people are very quick to begin looking back when there's too much in the present and ahead for me to want to do that, right? I don't see what the value is. And part of this is like, if you are in touch with people you knew when you were younger and you're the same age now, those people hit 40 and start talking about how music was only good when they were in college or whatever. And it's like, I fear that kind of stance. I want to remain engaged. And so I apply that to my own catalog too, right? I'm not listening to old Mountain Goat stuff unless I'm trying to exhume it to do something new with it, right? I'm not trying, I have no desire to be that person again. Right. I enjoyed being that person when I was that person, that artist when I was that artist, and that artist grows and that person grows. And that's the person I'm always interested in, is the one who has grown to something new and the one who's looking towards something new. Right. And that's, I mean, that's both an artistic ethos and a personal ethos, right? It's also, what you want to be in your personal life is like, there's that thing that evangelicals say that Jesus is the same today, tomorrow, and forever, right? I like that in some ways and I don't in other ways because Jesus is a human being. Human beings change, right? That's a thing. You grow. If you don't grow, you're never a human being. Well, Jesus is supposed to be fully God and fully human. He cannot be fully human if he did not change, right? If he did not grow as a person inside, not just in his body, right? So if you're going to claim fully God and fully human, then he had to change, right? That you don't get to make that claim otherwise. I think that's what makes human beings beautiful, that they grow. You are not the same. All the yous you used to be are still in there, and you can honor them or repair them or bargain with them or make peace with who they were when you were at your worst, but you are a new person today, right? Every day you wake up with new opportunities to grow. That will be true up to the last day of your life, right? And that's why I'm always trying to not look back too much, because you can go, well, I'm going to say, I felt this way about this political position or whatever forever. I think you always should be dealing with new facts on the ground, open to change, open to learning new things. That's how the joy stays in life, right? And so that's why I've been so resistive to any type of nostalgia. But as you age, you are going to at some point look back and taste the sweetness of that, right? And not just the sweetness, though, the harshness of it. If you look at passages in your own life or in history where you go, ooh, and actually that was perilous. Maybe you didn't feel the peril at the time, and you look at it and you go, no, that was danger. Actually, could have shook out a couple ways there. The same as when if you are driving and somebody cuts you off, right? And you think, wow, that was actually that close to a crash, but I was looking and I didn't crash my car. Well, you don't even usually think about it that much, but if you do stop to think, your whole life would have changed if you'd have crashed, right? In some way or another, right? And so I'm looking back in that way. I'm engaging the past in some way, in part because I feel like I'm now old enough to want to be doing that, to not miss out on that errand before I go in 20 or 30 years, right? And so, like I've been fairly reactionary about it up to now. Now I think if I'm going to engage that terrain, now is the time.
Yeah. The thread that you're pulling at, though, too, is, being aware of your own mortality, but you've always had you're not a pessimistic person.
No.
And I think, when I've heard you speak, whether it was when you were talking about your record at 4AD or just seeing you on tour and seeing how you engage with the audience, I'm always perplexed by the amount of joy you have. And
perplexed.
I think I think life is hard. Life is weird. And for me, my entry point to your music was through pain and suffering.
Yeah.
Right. And I felt that I could commiserate with your pain and suffering.
Yeah.
And I, as a young, irresponsible patron of an artist,
right.
I wanted you to stay in that world.
Yeah.
And when I saw you and I got to learn more about you, and obviously your catalog grew and grew, and I saw that there was a lot of joy in it. I was like, I still wanted you to exist in this person to kind of commiserate with me when I'm down. But I feel like you as an artist and a musician, you're constantly challenging what it means to engage with you in the state that you're in.
Well, I hope what I'm challenging is not just me, but what it is to engage with art, right? Like, even, I've made this claim a number of times, but like art is inherently affirmative, right? It is not, you can't write a book, you can't write a song, you can't make a painting that does not affirm. There are artists who tried. The Marquis de Sade is the most famous, right? It's like they're supposed to, but there's people who work in that vein, people who make really, very, very gruesome movies and books that you leave feeling bad. Michael Haneke, right, makes these movies that like they make you feel like shit when you watch them, right? But it remains an affirmative thing to do because it's an act of creation, right? It is making something where nothing was. That's what God does, right? And we can't really do that, but you can do it in the creative realm, that you express in a way that creates something that is infinitely engageable, that you can take and use in any number of ways, as background music, as something you're crying to for hours on end, as something you share with a friend because that helps you communicate with them. Those are three of infinite ways of experiencing the things that we make. Not me, everybody who makes stuff, right? And I have another shtick, which is like, and everybody does make stuff. Some people get credit for it because it takes the form of a song or a book, but we're all living creatively in whatever we do. In our lives are expressions of creativity. Those are inherently affirmative. Faulkner talks about this in his Nobel address. That like you're sitting there, whatever you're doing, wallowing on the worst day of your life, you are still expressing, here I am. No one has ever been exactly where I am. And at the same time, yes, they have. We've all shared these experiences, right? When you get away from them, that your pain was not unique, right? That actually is human. It's human. You get to be this. There was almost, it's funny, some of the evangelicals who are total hucksters, right? Like who, I don't think they actually believe in God or anything. This is one of their favorite points, right? Is to say that the chances of you being a human being on this planet were infinitesimal, right? Like you can't even contemplate how rare this gift is. And the gift remains a rare gift on the worst day of your life, right? It's like it's still this amazing possibility of experience. So when you are singing about sad and terrible things, you're still expressing that, right? You're expressing the harder side of that. But it's still that harder side exists in a broader context. I think all the doom metal bands know this. I think all the people who do more monochromatic art where they don't smile where they play it still know this, that it is an active, if not resistance, of sort of heels dug in affirmation, right? Of presence, right? It's an affirmation of self to engage with art in any way, right? It affirms where you are in that moment, and that is inherently positive, whether that's taken place with an extraordinarily dark piece of art or a light and fun one, right? So it's the same. It's all the same, right? It's just it's just in different colors.
How do you, as an individual, engage with art without letting it like become you?
Oh, without having it inform my process, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't worry about that too much. When I was younger, I did notice this. This is a funny story. When I was first getting into indie rock, the biggest band was Pavement, right?
Yeah.
Every record you ever read about in those days, every 7-inch goes, oh, this sounds a lot like Pavement, right? It's like, so I did not listen to them for several years. Everybody, Slanted Enchanted, you heard Slanted? Nope. Didn't hear it because I'm not going to listen because everybody seems to get really impacted by this guy. And I knew that could happen to me when I was a young writer, because if you are a young songwriter and you listen to too much Leonard Cohen, you end up writing bad Leonard Cohen. And we've all known people who get too into Dylan when they're in high school or whatever, and then they write stuff and it's bad Bob Dylan, right? Because you can only only be the one Bob Dylan. Now Bob Dylan is the sum of his influences, but he was so precocious that he could listen to a bunch of old blues and old country and still bring his own thing. Most of us, though, if we listen to a bunch of Leonard Cohen, then we try to write a song after we're deep in our Cohen phase, it's just going to sound like bad Leonard Cohen minus the wisdom, which is not good Leonard Cohen. Right? And so I remember like writing like a 9-verse song one day after dredging too long in Cohen, right? So I resisted listening to that stuff. Once you've established your own voice, and especially because I learned that mine comes more from poetry and books than it does from the music I listen to. My phrasing, my singing, my song phrasing comes probably more from jazz singers than anything else, but and soul singers maybe. But gospel singers too. But yeah, I don't. If something does rub off on me, I have no anxiety about that.
Sure,
somebody spots it, that's fine, because art's a big conversation. One of the most important figures in my life, my classics, my Latin professor. Most of her work was in the subject of influence, right? Which when we talk especially in the 21st century, when you talk about influence, we have a really infantile way of talking about it, right? Where the influence is perceived as exerting some power, right? Like, oh, the influential, big air quotes around that. The influential artist is the one who made a thing that somehow made other people sound that way. That's not how that actually works. The nominal influence actually is completely passive in that relationship. The nominal influence made a thing. The other people take things from it. They eat it, right? Or they, in my old professor's way, they have an intimate relationship with it, right? Where by engaging it, they transform it through their own self, right? So to be influenced is not something to be anxious about. It's something that happens, right? That you are actually the deciding factor in it, right? When you learn something, it really isn't a big deal to say, oh, so-and-so just rhymed shower with power. And I like the way that worked, to use, shower as an adjective in a line, rhyming it with power, right? Or whatever. I'm just saying that because there's a fan over there that says power plus.
Sure.
But any of those things, you can cop those, you can bite those, right? If you bite too hard, then you wind up sounding like other people. Be conscious of that. But that's where it really is just craft. Like, I'm talking a lot of mystical stuff, but this is nuts and bolts, right? It's like, it really is deciding how much to take, the same way you would if you're a woodworker, right? When somebody shows you how to do something, you don't have anxiety about saying, well, that's how I fit these two logs together, right? You know that you will probably have a way that you join them at some point that really is kind of your fit, right? But you learn the nuts and bolts as you would, and that's what you're learning from other people, right? Is how they did stuff, right? How to have fun with words,
Yeah, I mean, you certainly do. I mean, the new record is great, and it definitely. I think it's interesting because a lot of artists that'll put out records. Like, let's compare you to Dylan for a second, because it's easier on the top of my head. You can like put them in the different eras and different genres of their life, right? Like, and I'm curious because this new one was supposed to be called Grunges.
Yes.
It was,
that was just the joke idea that kind of gave birth to the album.
But what do you feel that really made it become Days?
Well, I wrote that song, and I really like that song. And I wanted to bring attention to it. And there's always a few titles that are being worked on. But it was after, it's like when I had enough to start looking at what it's about, it's like, oh, this is really kind of an album about mortality in some ways, and about angles on the past, right? About perspectives on the past, as seen from some ways down the line, and so I thought about that when I wrote the song Days, right? And which just has there's a lot of songs with very simple choruses on this, which is sort of where I'm at the moment. And so this just, do you know how short the days are, which I was very pleased with that. I think this is...
Okay, wait a second. Look, sometimes I gotta hit that pause button in here to tell you something. As you know, I've been collecting watches for 15 plus years now, even more than I've been doing this podcast. I got Mickey Mouse watches, I got Snoopy, I even got some heavy hitters in there, including my prize Seikos. And you're like, Jeremy, I know, but I'm always nervous about buying watches. It's kind of weird out there on the internet. Well, that's why your boy uses Bezel. Bezel is an incredible, trusted marketplace to find and buy your next dream watch, or even that new daily driver. They even have their own auctions, all backed and vetted by their incredible team of authenticators and experts. By the way, they're real people. It's not some tacky AI. That's super easy. You can contact their concierge team and say, hey, I'm looking for this or I'm looking for that, and they'll find it for you. And next thing you know, you'll receive that perfect watch. You can rest easy knowing it's authentic, correct, and now in the perfect spot on your wrist. So if you're looking for a new Speedmaster, Datejust, or you just want something fun and weird, visit getbezel.com and find your next watch at getbezel.com. Wait, what? Oh, you already did this? Oh, you just want to make sure that your new toy now stays safe. Look, I get it, because now Bezel offers insurance for your collection, even if you didn't purchase from them. So find it, buy it, or bid on your next watch at getbezel.com and insure it while you're at it at getbezel.com.
also a continuation of the last album in some ways. That like the last album takes place in a very short period of time with people who come to understand that their time is profoundly limited, right? That they're dying, right? They're dying this week, right? And so you and I, right? But the Jackson Browne line, they say in the end, it's a wink of an eye, right? And so when I thought about grunge, I was wondering, why am I thinking so much about grunge? Well, it's because a lot of those guys didn't make it, right? Andrew Wood, Lane Staley, even Chris Cornell lasted a long time, but like it's over time, no one from any genre will wind up doing that well. So it's like if doing well is not dying, right? But the grunge guys, there've been a lot of hard hits early on. Mia Zapata got murdered, right? And I thought, I was thinking, when that stuff was happening, it was on MTV News. It sort of is in the news cycle. The news cycle has a strong degree of unreality to it. But those are people. Those were young men and women, dying young, right? How old are you?
Yeah, I'm 40.
What if you died when you were 23?
I know.
How awful would that have been to not have gotten any of this, right?
I think about people like Croce and Hendrix. And your
whole story to be whoever you were at 23. Right, that's all anybody knows about Jeremy is what he was up to that point. I mean, it's like, really, you can see at 40 where you go, oh my God, like most of my story is after that. Well, that would right, and so most of your story is after that. There's a lot of very important prelims. There's lore, right? There's lore that goes into the Jeremy who lived from 23 to 40, but it's just preliminaries, right? And I was thinking about that stuff, that like these stories that get so hot and tight, are on some alternate timeline, really just prologue. And thinking about, bands who played Carnegie Hall, who people don't talk about anymore, but were very important to me, and the sort of kaleidoscopic sense of what's important to you is unknown to others, but was also important to somebody else who doesn't know who you are. There's many, many layers of perception and meaning and all these things, right?
Yeah. Like who is a Carnegie band that you?
I'm talking about Renaissance. This is a song on the album called Annie Haslam Imperial Phase, about the singer from the band called Renaissance. Annie Haslam, who has perfect pitch and has one of the clearest voices in the whole history of rock, and I bet you've never heard of them. But they played Carnegie Hall because Prague was having a moment, and they had good management, and for that time, well, I don't know what they would say about that, about their management at the time, but whoever was handling them did enough work to get them into Carnegie Hall, and they issued a live album of it that I owned when I was a child, right?
Oh my God.
And I didn't have any sense of, is this a popular band or not a popular band? These were not questions on my radar. I just knew that I liked their music, and I came back to it 10 years ago or so. It's like, God, I love this fucking band so much. They're so good. They're Canterbury style folk or prog, so they're not wig out prog, but very formal progressive rock, right? Experimenting with something other than doing blues forms to make rock songs, right? And I just adore them, and her voice is incredible. So it's literally just, the song is sort of like, do you know the story of ELO by Randy Newman?
No. Wait, that like the band ELO or something?
Randy Newman on the album Born Again had a song that I could not figure it out when I was a kid. And now I think, well, he had a song and he wanted to write about it. He knew Jeff Lynne at this point. So Jeff Lynne actually, I believe, works on the song. But the whole song they were 6 fine English boys who knew each other in Birmingham. They bought a drum and guitar, started a rock roll band. Johnny played a little violin, and Bobby Joe played the big violin, the one that stands on the floor. They were all in the rock and roll band. Their first song sounded like this, and then the next thing goes into an ELO impression. Please get me a witness. Right off, they needed a name. Someone said, how about the Renegades? Johnny said, well, I don't know. I prefer ELO. I love their Mr. Blue Sky. Almost my favorite is Turned to Stone. And how about Telephone Line? I love that ELO. That's the entire song. Well, I've always had a fondness for that song, and for songs like there's some other bands who've done things like this, just telling stories of the growth of bands, and this song does that for Renaissance, who people don't think about that much, but I think about a lot. And so it's kind of a fake Ian Hunter song in terms of its structure. It's got that sense, but yeah.
Oh, that's sick. I love Randy Newman, and I think I'm curious about this, but there's bands that when I was younger, I definitely would just kind of shit on and roll my eyes at.
Yeah.
And as I've gotten older, and I guess I've felt that I've become more mature in ways that I've kind of rediscovered these bands and artists that I've overlooked. And Randy Newman is probably the one that I am so embarrassed that I would just rip on.
Well,
he's the greatest.
Well, you're younger is the thing is like, by the time you're aware of Randy Newman, he's doing a lot of soundtrack songs, and Short People has happened.
He did Toy Story.
Yeah. Yeah, he did Toy Story. But the thing is, that's it. No matter how much you think about, about Randy Newman's music, there's always a little more. Like his engagement specifically with New Orleans music, with New Orleans piano styles, with Fats Domino, right? Nobody talks about Fats Domino. Randy Newman talks about Fats Domino and used to close his shows with Encore Blue Monday, because Fats Domino was changing up the game, right? With songs that you think, I found my thrill guy. Yes, the I found my thrill guy. Utterly doing amazing things with New Orleans piano. And New Orleans is where American music comes from. I mean, American music comes from a lot of places. But the centrality of New Orleans to the conversation, I mean, I just don't think you can name a city that's more important in American music than New Orleans, right? I don't think you can. And Randy Newman has understood this from early, but his father was a film composer, right? So he's using a lot of classical stuff in the service of popular art, right? And so it's not, it's not post-romantic style. It's not classical of the salon sort, but it's sort of like, incidental music, thematic music, right? So program music. But Newman has all this stuff like written on the inside of his wrist by the time he's 5, right? And so, and he's one of those first guys to be playing with unreliable narrators. Not first, but to be really one of the first guys in the post-rock era to be leaning in hard on making the listener do more work, right? To ask, who is this speaking? What's the speaker's investment in what he's talking about? Right. And how am I supposed to be taking this? And how does what the speaker of the lyric is saying, how does that engage with the sentimentality of the music? Like, I mean, one of the most devastating Randy Newman songs is Sail Away, right? And Sail Away is sung by a slaver trying to pitch America to the people he's about to kidnap and enslave, right? It's an incredibly dark song with the sweetest music, right? Just utterly beautiful melody, seductive, right? And that's speaking to the mindset of both the person in the song, but of people who've bought into the myth of like how to enslave somebody but bring them to a country of opportunity might be a positive thing. It's not. It's not. Maybe down the line, these people's descendants might prize some positive things from that, but that doesn't mean there was anything good about it, right? So, and Newman's hip to all the density of all that, but I mean, even the thing, You Got a Friend in Me from a musical standpoint, if you listen to these songs, they're quite good, right? You're sick of
absolutely
Pixar movies, and because you have to hear them over and over, and because they seem simple. But to do a simple song like that, there's a reason why you haven't heard "You Got a Friend in Me" too. From it, you can't name the guy who wrote the song that was almost as good as "You Got a Friend in Me." It's like, it's the one that actually has the juice, right? And so, I had a complicated relationship with Randy Newman. I wouldn't know about him if not for my stepfather, who was like the world's #1 Randy Newman fan, took me to see him when I was 7 years old. And that concert is burned into my mind because he had one of his abusive outbursts that very week, right? And it was hard. Many physically abusive parents, people in relationships, go through a deep process of shame after one of these outbursts. Plenty don't, I'm told, right? But there's it's so much more complicated than most people think it is if they haven't lived with it, right? It's like they feel shame and guilt, right? They've hurt people that they love, right? They don't get better the next week at all. It happens again and again and again. But the shame is incredibly painful for them to carry, right? And there's no one can do anything about it. And we, as child and the guy who had hit me a week before, went to go see Randy Newman. And I'll never forget. It's like he was experiencing feelings watching these songs and sharing them with me that he didn't have the way to process. A deep experience for me.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
But he was the guy, but my stepfather was a smart guy. It's like people often, you want to be careful trying to paint too complex a picture of a person who was a very abusive presence in your life. But like the reason I'm able to talk to you with this complex about Randy Newman, because I was introduced to that music at an early age by a guy who also understood it at a very deep level. right? And who was hip to it early, who caught it early, who heard Sail Away, or I think 12 songs before that, and was like, oh, this is better than the other stuff, right? This is actually deep, right? And so I listened to it all the time. We got every Randy Newman album new all the way up through Born Again, which is that when we left the house. But yeah, I've stuck with it all. And he's just, there's nobody quite like him.
I play Harps and Angels a lot, which is much later Randy Newman. And Losing You is a song that
Losing You is amazing.
It's so good. And it just knocks me flat. And it's like, I don't know how often this happens with you, but I feel like probably when I hit my 30s, but definitely in my 40s, often when I play music, I will like get emotional. Like I'll cry.
Oh, I'm a big crier when I listen to music. That's I've always been that way.
I just don't know how to make it stop sometimes.
Well, man, what you got to do is re-engage that evangelical thing. Right, and then go listen to Rich Mullins. Right? You cry your eyes out. Listen to Rich Mullins. Listen to Amy Grant's version of "Nothing Is Beyond You." This is a song that on one of my darkest days ever in 2008, I just listened to it like 14 times in a row. It was the only thing I could do.
Well, here's the thing that I'm in now, right? And now, like, I'm getting a tiny emotional.
Yeah,
my dad passed in 24. He had Parkinson's for 30 years.
For how long?
Just completely 30 years. So he was diagnosed. Yeah, he was diagnosed at 39. It's totally robbed his music career, and he died. He was like 68 about when he died. And you don't die from Parkinson's, for listeners. Like but it slowly robs your mental ability and self and your ability to communicate. And so he died from complications related to Parkinson's. Yeah. But through the like grief and stuff that I've been going through, it's weird how my older brother and I have become a lot closer, and he shared with me what I thought was like this poem. And I was like, oh my God, this is so beautiful. Like, who wrote this? And he was like, Dad did.
Oh,
and I'm hitting this thing now where like I'm going through all my dad's music.
Yeah.
And I went and tried to get a bunch of his old stuff remastered, and I'm like putting it all out. And I'm in the situation now where I'm an adult and I want to have an adult relationship with my dad. But I moved away when I was 18 in this like hedonistic pursuit to try to be a rock star and live in New York and all this stuff. And I oftentimes get really upset with myself because my dad was the rock star. My dad was the guy who was playing with Dan Peek and who was, singing songs and writing music and teach me how to do it. And now I come like full circle in this moment where I'm looking at his art and looking at his music. And I mean, because also a lot of this, this stuff triggered by the record and the stuff that you're talking about, because I'm like trying to have this relationship with a person of this time and era.
Right.
And I'm now seeing like, oh, he was younger than me when he wrote that song.
Oh yeah. That stuff is very, that I think is a vital, you're early actually on this errand. Who was my dad when he was my age? You don't ask yourself that when you're 17, right?
Yes.
But when you're in middle age, you do. Like my thing with that is like, my dad tried to save my life when I was addicted to drugs, and he did the best he could to get me out of. He was he was in AA, so he should have known that geographicals don't work, right? But his thought was, if I got away from my girlfriend, she was the problem. Everybody had an identified problem, right? And that was all the fingers were pointing at her. So he took out a loan so he'd be able to give me $560 a month to live on. That included rent and tuition, right? In Portland, right? Well, he was in Portland, made the offer. He said, you can do this anywhere in the country, just get away from Claremont. I said, well, I was in Portland. I didn't expect to live long. So I said, yeah, sure, Portland, whatever, right? Well, there was a lot of meth in Portland, I'll tell you. There's a lot of drugs in Portland. So, and they were the heroin was extraordinarily high quality. It was really dangerous. But I now, at my age, I go, wait, to take out a loan, you have to go to the bank. You have to go through a whole process of stuff, right? It interrupts your life to do. You're taking a chance, and you're never going to get that money back unless somehow miraculously your drug-addicted son a year later lands a good job and is better and is mature enough to go, oh, my dad spent, what's 560 times 9 on me? I should give it. But I didn't do that. You don't do that when you're a young man. You go, I have money. Parents have money, right? And so, but actually my dad, did this thing that if I, heaven forbid, when my younger children should 7 years from now land in trouble, I'll be facing questions like that. If that should happen, how do I deal with this? I now see him as a man, right? Not as dad. It takes so long. I think your parents have to die for you to understand that they were people,
Yeah.
That doesn't mean, but it also doesn't mean if you went through stuff with them that you go, oh, well, they were just people. It's like, no, they still were people with agency and you make decisions, right? But it does help you contextualize everything. That, like, the notion that in relationships that anybody knows what they're doing or has a program that works. These are actually child's versions of how relationships work. Relationships are dynamic, right? They're in a state of play at all times, right? This is, I think, why people who try to game romantic and sexual relationships say, well, here's the 5 steps to dealing with a woman or whatever. That is an act of desperate fear, right? Because the actual state of play is there's no game. There's no, here's how it's done. There are probably things you can do that will persuade or trick people into sleeping with you, but congratulations, whatever, right? It's like actual relationships, there's no playbook and there will never be a playbook because those two people have never met before, right? And so they've never existed before. Well, this depends on your spirituality, whether those two people have ever existed before. The spirits may have been in multiple bodies, but the people, the expressions of them that take place in this husk only existed at that time, right? But so when you reflect on your parents after they are gone, you begin to understand them as people who, were once as you are now, right? In the exact age you are now. Right? And they had their own things. People always quote the first verse of Philip Larkin, but they don't go on through the poem. This be the verse? You don't?
No.
Check it out. They fuck you up.
Definitely will.
They fuck you up, your mom and dad. No, I mean,
yes, I do know this. Yes.
But do you know the second? They may not mean to, but they do. They fill you with the faults they have and add some extra just for you. But they were fucked up in their turns by fools in old-style hats and coats who half the time were soppy stern and half at one another's throats. Man hands on misery to man. It deepens like a coastal shelf. Get out as early as you can and don't have any kids yourself. So that's Philip Larkin, right? It's not the only opinion. And if you think he's not going that deep just because he can at the end, you got to entertain that possibility that, like, oh, if I say this, people will feel the dread. It's like there's a performer's verve in that also. But the middle one, with the words that we as Americans don't hear as much because soppy stern doesn't really mean anything to us. Old style hats and coats means nothing to us, right? But they were fucked up in their turn is a deep line, right? It's like, that's true. Your vision of your parents that you never quite get free of when you are a very young child is they are perfect and they know everything, right? It is natural for you to think that when you're 2, when you're 3, when you're 5, right? We had a nanny for a brief period of time, a wonderful person who said to me, I wish you could see how Moses talks about you when you're not here, because I'll be sharing a story with him. And Moses was very precocious conversationalist, and he would be like, what can I share? So Kate would be telling a story, and Moses would go, my dad, right? And it was clear, like, that was his, I'm going to tell you now this, my amazing part of this story. It involves this guy. He's incredible, right? Well, now Moses is grown. He knows that I talk too much. I'm wrapped up in my own thing all the time. My work possesses me. He understands me in a complex way now. When you are a child, the sun shines out of your parent, no matter who they are, no matter what they're doing to you, right? They occupy a godlike space in your consciousness, whether you know it or not. And then as a grown-up, part of your job is to go, they were not God then either.
Oh.
They were a person with a small creature in their life, and they probably hadn't done a lot of math on how that worked. It's like at what their actual job was going to be, right? Or even if they did have that, they probably had some fairly rigid notions, whereas rigidity is the enemy of parenthood. You can't have ideas in an outline, but you can't have a program because you've never dealt with that person before. That person is only becoming. Your job is to help them become. Terms like shape or strong, but that's in there. You do want to be saying to young men, look, this is what you must not do. Spell out some things that young men shouldn't do, right? Share your feelings as to why, but you don't say, well, do whatever you want. It's like, no, you have to say, look, I believe that there are good ways to live and there are many ways to live. And there are some things that we don't do as people and some opinions that we find noxious that I think I'm right about, and you share those things. But you're only sharing them with, yeah, there's another poem. Continuing to live. God, it's also Philip Larkin. That's wild. What I'm referring to here is the fact that these relationships we have in navigating this are singular. I can share this with you about how, one errand is understanding your parents as human beings, not your parents, but people, their own people who had their own lives that prior to you were just lives. They weren't waiting for you. They were doing things, right? But that relationship, even though I can share that concept with you, it's different in every occurrence. Continue to live, Philip Larkin. Continuing to live, that is, repeat a habit formed to get necessaries, is nearly always losing or going without. It varies. There's loss of interest, hair, and enterprise. If the game were poker, yes, you might discard them, draw a full house, but it's chess. And once you have walked the length of your mind, what you command is clear as a lading list. Anything else must not, for you, be thought to exist. And what's the profit? Only that in time we half identify the blind impress all our behavings bear, may trace it home. But to confess, on that green evening when our death begins, just what it was is hardly satisfying, since it only applied to one man once, and that one dying.
Wow.
It's also another case of so these poems are incredibly deep. I haven't read the biographies. In my understanding, he was a very unpleasant person with a lot of really noxious opinions. But the poems are great.
Yeah, I mean, there's a real art for separate the art and artist situation there.
Yeah. But since it only mattered to one man ever, and that one dying has always stuck with me since I first learned it at Robert Mezzi's feet.
That's beautiful. Thanks for sharing that.
Sure.
But thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure, man. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, I will say your music has done far more for me than you will ever understand. So it means a lot.
Thank you. It's very meaningful to me. I'm going to give you my shtick that I have about that. And that is, I don't think this shtick actually helps anybody except me, because when people say I was talking about agency in art, right? Like when I'm writing these songs, did I say, man, there's got to be a guy named Jeremy who's struggling, man. If he's not struggling now, he's going to struggle soon. I got to write a song for that dude. No, I don't have a struggling person in mind when I'm writing, right? I'm just writing.
Yeah.
The person who does the work, any text, a song or whatever, is a collaboration between the reader and the speaker, right? Now, that doesn't mean that anything means anything you want it to mean. Doesn't mean that. If the speaker is careful, he's made a space in which the play within that space is infinite, but its applications aren't infinite, right? It's like, you can be a lazy reader and say, yeah, they are infinite. I can make it work. Well, you're just showing me your pyrotechnics when you do that, right? But you, when you are drowning and you reach for a piece of art, it's your hand that grabs it, right? The artist didn't sight you in the waves and launch his harpoon at you, right? You reached up, grabbed the thing you needed, and made such use of it as the artist made space for. And that's what I'm proud of, right? But that's not an act of benevolent agency. I'm doing what I do, right? I'm doing what God made me to do, right? But the use that's made of it is part of a joyous and incredible collaborative process that I believe was also instilled by a divine power to connect us more as people, right? To understand that we make things for each other that are beautiful, and that the made thing has no use unless the person using it makes use of it. I should have been a pastor, right? I can do this. This is, I can.
Who says you're not?
Well,
nobody says you're not.
I know, but I don't get to just do the Bible every week. If I do that, I'll lose my audience.
That's fair. I get it. But thanks again so much. It was a pleasure.
Cool. Yeah, a pleasure talking to you.
All right, that's it for this episode. Thanks so much for hanging out. Support the people making good stuff. Wear what you like. Enjoy yourself. I'll talk to you next week.